Malevolent Shrine. This is a special domain without a specific outer limit or shell, but the slash attacks that come from it are constant and powerful. Not only does it look like a temple to worship the spawn of Satan, but the range of attacks coming from it can be expanded to a maximum of 200 meters in radius. In fact, during Shibuya, Sukuna used Dismantle instead of Cleave, which he kept for decimating living beings. This is because Cleave is more of an adaptable technique that can be adjusted depending on the toughness of the target. Also, by changing some parameters through a binding vow, Sukuna can make his attacks more powerful. For example, he did this against Gojo by removing the sure hit effect to try and take down the strongest sorcerer. Similarly, Sukuna uses a binding vow to stretch the reach of his domain. In this case, he had to allow an escape route for it to stretch out of its range of effects and attacks. And because it doesn't have an outer barrier like other domains do, the only way to fully counter it is by overpowering it, or rendering Sukuna unable to keep it active anymore. Let's not forget though, that Sukuna's one of the special characters who can launch his domain multiple times if needed. Coffin of the Iron Mountain. Special grade curse Jogo's domain is filled with flames, lava, and mountainous terrain, which suits the Mount Fuji headed owner and his fire technique. It's like standing at the bottom of an active volcano. Apparently, it's so hot inside Jogo's domain that most people would instantly be incinerated once they're trapped. And if that doesn't end them, Jogo can control the ground and heat elements telekinetically to target and destroy his enemy. Even while next to Gojo, Itadori felt the heat and started to panic from the temperature of it. Too bad for Jogo though. He was against Gojo himself. Not to mention, Sukuna used an unknown fire technique to match him and took him down with ease. Unlimited Void. With this domain, Gojo's guaranteed hit aspect comes from bombarding the opponent with endless information that touches all senses through the use of Limitless. This makes it impossible for their brain to process what they're receiving, and basically makes them paralyzed and vulnerable to all attacks. It's like seeing everything and seeing nothing all at once. Considering this comes from the strongest sorcerer currently alive, it makes sense Gojo's domain would be so overwhelming that most enemies don't even get to witness the inside. Thankfully, Gojo's skilled enough to be able to exempt people who are within his domain, but not his intended targets for it. And let's not forget that Gojo can open it multiple times through his energy cost-effective 6 eyes, as well as calculate the precise amount of time to keep it open to avoid unnecessary casualties. Self-embodiment of perfection. This is Mahito's terrifying idol transfiguration brought to its utmost limit. With death on the horizon for him, inspiration suddenly hit Mahito and he was able to conjure hand signs for the domain from his mouth. It has the goal of striking an enemy's soul and the shape of it without needing physical contact. Knowing that touching an enemy isn't always possible, this domain remedies that issue by dragging an unlucky soul into a trap and targeting them instantly and without missing. If the target has already been touched beforehand, then it makes it certain to kill whoever is trapped inside the domain, unless they have a crazy friend who breaks in from the outside. Knowing that Sukuna was a landmine for him, Mahito also adapted his duration to avoid touching his soul within Yuji by copying Gojo's quick thinking. Chimera Shadow Garden. Though Megumi used this when it was incomplete at first, and with him heavily damaged, it still left an impact with fans. It conjures up a shadowy, damp place that confuses the enemy with multiple Shikigami summons, as well as shadow clones of Megumi himself. Thanks to this and Demon Dog Totality, it helped him take down a special grade curse by himself. Despite being an offensive domain, Megumi used it to support his allies within Dagon's domain, and give Maki a weapon to defend herself. Despite not being a refined domain yet, with some backup, Megumi can use it to nullify other domains' guaranteed hits. It does cost a lot of his cursed energy though. Since it's still a new upgrade for Megumi, he struggles to create the barrier for his domain, and can't ensure it will hit his opponent. Instead, Megumi's 10 Shadows technique is provided with a much needed boost, 120%, that can help him survive the battle. Graveyard Domain. The smallpox deity itself itself was summoned by Kenjaku using Geto's curse manipulation ability. It was already a special grade curse disease, so having a domain just further confirmed how strong it was. The smallpox curse creates a graveyard and requires fulfilling some criteria before the guaranteed hit can be triggered within. It seems to stamp some symbols with his fist and palm, speaking in a non-human language to conjure up massive stones. More specifically, the target has to be put inside of a coffin and kept there with a gravestone for 3 seconds for the conditions to be met. And if it succeeds, the person is afflicted with the disease the curse represents. In this case, smallpox. Sadly, the domain can only have one target at a time, choosing the person with the most cursed energy output. This means if multiple people are inside the domain, they can work together to overcome the conditions. By the way, the domain was technically unnamed, so you kind of get the idea of how long it lasted from that. Horizon of the Captivating Skanda. On the outside, this domain looks just like a tropical island, made for some special grade curse friends to relax in. But actually, if Dagon conjures up his fish friends, some water-themed Shikigami, then anything within the domain is attacked relentlessly. It's aptly named Death Swarm. Not only that, but they're impossible to even see because they don't appear until they start attacking. And by that point, the damage has already started, as the Shikigami munch away at any targets like Piranha. This was only possible due to Dagon's innate technique that allowed him to expel water and even create massive tidal waves. This can also be used to pull people in and drown them, if somehow they escape the aquatic Shikigami. Despite being a very powerful domain, it remained easy to break into from the outside, like Mojitos. Another downfall might have been the changing of the domain's intent. Prior to Shibuya, his domain was only meant as a peaceful spot for his allies, and since Dagon only recently evolved into a full-fledged cursed spirit, he struggled against Megumi's shadow domain backed by a coveted bloodline technique. Toji popping in certainly didn't help. Time Cell Moon Palace. Naoya Zenin's domain directly relates to his inherited innate technique of projection sorcery that can cause enemies to turn into 24 frame per second images. Part of why he even unlocked his domain, though, is through having been killed by non-jujutsu means. Maki had left him alive, but her mother finished him off without using cursed energy, so he came back as a vengeful cursed spirit with more power than when he was alive. Even his speed was unmatched by her, despite her awakening of heavenly restriction, and not to mention being able to use 24 frames per second on his opponents at a cellular level. The domain itself is mostly empty, save for a massive eye and flesh that forms a platform for the opponents to stand on. Anyone who's touched within the domain has to move at the same speed as Naoya or face destruction, rather than just being turned into images. Unfortunately, his domain, like most others, doesn't recognize people with no cursed energy, and so anyone like Maki can become invisible to the guaranteed attacks. Deadly Sentencing. Being a lawyer, Higuruma has a specific Shikigami named Judge Man, who plays the role of a Grim Reaper or an executioner within the small courtroom. With it, and his newly gained curse technique, Higuruma forces a non-violent trial between him and whoever he sees as a guilty party. Through a binding vow, Higuruma explains the rules and allows the accused to defend themselves through statements. Unlike what the name sounds like, the trial plays out fairly, and the guilty verdict is the only time when anyone can be injured. If the person is guilty, Higuruma's gavel becomes giant and strikes the person while stopping them from using cursed energy. But that's only one of the multiple outcomes of the trial. A more extreme verdict requires the use of the executioner's sword. Even then, Higuruma overrode the verdict against Yuji when he saw that our MC was taking the blame for violent acts he hadn't actually committed by choice. Yeah, Sukuna should have been the one judged, and he probably will be in the future. Idle Death Gamble. Just like the name suggests, Kinji Hikari's domain has to rely on a large amount of luck to succeed in his domain. Purposely created as one of the most confusing domains by Gege. Poked fun of within the story too. It actually has multiple chances of helping Hikari. Through a Japanese-style slot machine, it features a romance manga's characters and needing to match numbers and images. The main character is Yuki Yamaguchi, who experiences different trope-like scenarios with other characters. The domain has a number of boosts available too, and different outcomes that could occur. There's no end to the entertainment we could get from the private pure love train if it wasn't a life or death battle. Interestingly, all the rules and information is instantly transferred to the person brought inside, and it's one of the fastest domains to initiate at 0.2 seconds. Not to mention that if Hikari hits the jackpot during a battle, he becomes invincible for 4 minutes and 11 seconds through an endless supply of cursed energy pouring into him. This also allows him to keep opening his domain, so instead of a guaranteed hit, it's guaranteed survival against high-level threats. No matter the injury during this time, reverse cursed energy will heal the wounds. The odds of it are 1 in 239, but if Hikari spins enough times, there's always another chance through secret probability information. Hikari certainly proved himself against ancient sorcerer Kashimo, gambling with his life at every moment. Womb profusion. Kenjaku's borderless domain, much like Sukuna's, depicts an amalgamation of womb-like cursed spirits to reflect both the experiments he did while in Noritoshi Kamo's body and his current body, Suguru Geto's. Infamous curse manipulation. Just looking at it, the totem of suffering spirits certainly suits someone named the most evil sorcerer in history, and it took down a special grade fighter like Yuki extremely quickly, despite her using a simple domain, which should have aided her in battle. The full details of the domain aren't known, since Tengen was able to break it down as planned, but there was a powerful blast unleashed that was reminiscent of Geto's maximum Uzumaki. Though it's a mysterious and strong domain, Kenjaku was still worried about going up against someone like Gojo on his own. This gives us a hint as to where it may land in terms of power. Threefold affliction. Yorozu, who is inhabiting Sumiki's body, has a special technique where she can construct anything she has enough knowledge of to reproduce. Think someone like Yaoyorozu from My Hero Academia, but older and not needing to consume calories. Funny that they have similar names too. Yorozu's specialty is the creation of liquid metal, which she can use for armor or weapons, since it's a stable substance but can change volume. For her domain, first she created the impossibly perfect circle and then did the hand signs. Yorozu's sure hits are activated through constructs in weird plant-like shapes that surround the target within a blank white space. This might have been effective against most opponents, especially those not familiar with her techniques, but Sukuna falls outside of those parameters. Rest in peace, Sumiki's body. Bonus round. Besides all the ones we've gone through, there are a few domains we know exist, but we haven't been able to see them for different reasons. For example, Yuki Tsukumo was going to release her domain against Kenjaku to ensure Tengen's protection, but was told not to. She used a simple domain instead, and since Yuki didn't survive the battle, we never got to witness what her technique and Garuda would have been used for within the domain. It feels like a lost opportunity, honestly.
There's also a three-way domain clash between Yuta Kotsu, Ryu Ishigori, and Takako Uro that ended with them canceling each other's techniques out. So two of them are mysteries and will never be known either, since it seems that Ryu is, for sure dead now, and Uro didn't come out of hiding once faced with Sukuna's vast power. Though we've seen Hajime Kashimo's innate technique because he wanted to keep it for facing Sukuna specifically, is it possible that he had a domain too? We have seen him use some kind of electrical curse energy in the past, and does it take some time to recharge? So maybe a domain would make it faster to unleash multiple attacks. Most likely, his domain wouldn't have been as strong as Sukuna's, of course, and he would have lost the tug of war in that clash. On the other hand, Yuta's domain, as I predicted, was saved for the big match against Sukuna, and we got the unexpected reveal of Yuji's nameless domain to boot. Authentic mutual love. It comes as no surprise that Yuta's domain would involve a sword and copying techniques, since that's the basis of his curse techniques. But aesthetically, it's like a garden of blades waiting to be pulled out, like something out of an Arthurian tale, except that even Yuta has no idea which technique he will draw from the blade he chooses. The entire area is surrounded by mizuhiki, which is an ancient Japanese art of knot tying, adding to the intimidating feeling. Despite the random nature of it, Yuta can at least decide which of his acquired techniques he wants to use as the offensive effect of his domain when it's activated. In other words, he could use Curse Speech or Sukuna's own Cleave as the guaranteed attacks to use on enemies. The katanas hold one use each, but the amount of blades available in the domain are endless. So even if Yuta doesn't pick the technique he wants at first, he's bound to hit it shortly after. He just has to be careful of the order he uses them in and their short lifespan, which was likely implemented as a handicap for Yuta's already overpowered curse techniques. Yuji's hometown. Even though he's the main character, Yuji's been behind for most of the series when it comes to advancement, and his domain is no exception. Not only do we get it at the tail end of the series, but it's left without a name. If not for the replacement training Yuji did through Yui's technique, this might not have been possible. It was thanks to Kusakabe and his advanced knowledge of barriers that Yuji created a domain for himself. As for its offense, well, is it any surprise that it combines his ability to strike someone's soul directly with the slashes from Dismantle, and he can attack this way without needing to touch someone directly. As for the visual aspect of it, it recreates Yuji's hometown and the events that shaped his life when he lived there. It can also populate the world with tourist spots, plants, and animals from his past. From the look of it, I'd argue that it's only semi-closed, to allow for him to walk through the vast expanse of it and relive the memories. But maybe this was a special form of a domain created solely for Sukuna. He does mention it was created last second so that they could chat. The fact that we only see it once and against a singular enemy makes it hard to know whether it adapts to the person who's brought inside or not. But considering Sukuna can alter the radius of his domain, and they're distantly related, it's not impossible that this isn't the domain's only form. But with the series rushed to its conclusion, we'll likely never know. That's pretty much it for this one, guys. Let me know what you thought about the domain expansions in the comments, and if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.